Vaya con Dios, amigo.
What's that mean?
Go with God.
You're listening to the Rock God Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Rock God Podcast, the only podcast that talks to heavy metal musicians and artists about their thoughts or opinions about God. I'm your host, David Locklear, the owner, founder, and head writer at heavy-vinyl.com. Today we're talking to Dan Blomquist of Massachusetts-based doom metal band Conclave. Conclave descended onto the metal scene in 2014 with their debut EP, Breaking Ground, which was closely followed by their full-length monolith called Sins of the Elders. Dan has played for many bands in the New England doom scene since the 90s, including the recently formed Benthic realm. For anyone who follows the doom scene, the doom community in the New England scene, it's just completely amazing when you really study the bands that have been representing it. There's Warhorse, Come to Grief, Fistula, Earthride, and so many more. Dan talks to us today about this doom metal family tree, the ironic nature of Conclave's name, and the push and pull of family responsibilities, jobs, and the hobbies that keep us sane. well. It's been a hectic day today. We're preparing for 1 to 3 inches of snow, which, around here is an apocalypse, but for you guys, I'm sure that's like, Tuesday.
Yeah, that's breakfast.
Yeah, around here, people just, any mention of snow, the whole place shuts down, everybody freaks out, school gets out early, so that was what I was up against yesterday when I was like, 12:30, that'll be a perfect time, and then we get the phone call, and it's like, nope, everybody's getting out because everybody's freaking out, so I appreciate you, bending your schedule a little bit for me.
Oh, absolutely. I know it's been difficult for us to hook up for a while now. So.
Right. Yeah, we both got the whole job father thing going on, and it's just like anything can happen at any moment.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 escapade for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but there are some times where it's just like, man, can't we just have a schedule where I know what to expect?
No. There's a simple answer for that.
Right. Well,
I have two boys here that are kind of dipping their toes into the workforce pool, if you will. So they're here more than they are away from home. And then my daughter does homeschooling here, so the house is usually full and a lot going on, like you said. And I work from home too, so it's definitely from the moment any one of us wakes up until the moment the last one of us goes to bed,
or falls over.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what do you do? What is your full-time gig?
My full-time gig is I basically am a draftsman. I do AutoCAD drawings for steel construction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I used to actually do the construction. I came up through the trades, and my grandfather and uncle were both tradesmen and carpenters, millwrights, and welders. I kind of took a shine to the fire and smoke of welding, so I kind of started dabbling around doing that when I was about 10 years old, backyard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And said, I really like this. Went to school for it, went to a trade school, and graduated, and, inhaled my fair share of chemicals and carcinogens and poisons and stuff for a number of years. Another one of my uncles is a welding engineer. I worked for Bath Iron Works and Penn State University, like with their laser research and welding lab there. And they're like, hey, get out from under the hood, start pushing yourself in other directions of the field. You're not going to live forever doing this. And I said, yeah, that's probably some pretty sage advice. So I started to really pour myself into, learning more about the blueprints and the drawings and the details, and tried to really pump all the head fitters and people that were already reading these things as to, kind of give me a leg up on how to interpret them. And just kept pushing and pushing. I'd take drawings home at night, and study them, get better at them and better at them. Got to move up to being, fitters in different places, and then moved up to being foreman at places and running the shops, and then, project managing and comptrolling. So I kind of got out from underneath the hood and got more of the management end of things. And that deals with a lot of people. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Right, yeah.
And so at times it gets to be pretty frustrating. You can't keep anybody happy, it would seem, most of the time, because you're always so busy and you were never caught up. And I says, geez, maybe I should look even further, past this end of it. And that's when I started to get more into the design end of things and actually doing the drawings, which was kind of nice. I got to build myself a little hole to climb into and, shut the doors on society a little bit. And still be able to do, at some level, the trade that I've always loved doing. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you're talking about, the way that when you're in charge of a group of people, you can't make everybody happy. It's just impossible. And
it is.
I remember I was a supervisor years ago at a company, and it was just it was a pretty dirty job. And I remember I just got so sick and tired of being asked, can I do this? Can I do that? And I finally I got so mad, and I got a red marker and I scribbled no across my shirt just so they would quit asking me. Like,
don't even bother asking.
Yeah, it's like, here's your answer. I'm busy.
Yeah. And when you're in that position, musician, people look for you to kind of be that beacon and be the positivity and be the direction that they need and help them and support them and understand them all the time. And, there's never really a thought or a concern for you or how you're feeling, and you don't get to have the excuse of, well, something didn't go right. No, it doesn't matter because there's 10 people behind you looking, for your support and direction. So it can be tough, but it not can be. It is tough. I don't care who's doing it. They'll all say the same thing. It's a rough job.
Yeah, and it's tricky too because what you'll end up doing is, if you do get frustrated, then people look at that as some sort of weakness.
Yep.
And then you're stuck. You're just like, all right, so I can't have an emotion. All right, I see how it is.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I was actually just listening to the new Conclave single. What was it? War Stalks the Land.
Oh yeah. The last one we did that for a compilation that a friend of ours was putting out called Death Kiss. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was just like, a quick little self-release thing that you guys wanted to put out, but it was on a compilation. That's cool.
Yep. They had done it with a bunch of area bands. Mary Frances Church is the woman who was the backbone of it and her brainchild. It was a bunch of it's a great way to kind of share, a lot of different styles of music that are coming right out of the Boston scene and the community and the surrounding areas, She did all of it. She paid for everything. That's why we weren't trying to, overly capitalize on it or anything like that. Asked her if we could put out a little single version, kind of a novelty thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't sell the digital versions of it online or anything. If anybody wants to buy that, they can buy it from her and help support the cause,
Yeah.
But it was a neat kind of, like I said, a little novelty release for us to have something, during the interim between, albums and lineup changes and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great song. Last song that was penned by Terry Savastano, who was our former guitarist, but still long-time and forever friend.
Right. Oh, so Terry's not in the band anymore?
Nope. He was getting extremely busy with Come to Grief, and it was tough to do, the two bands because we were kind of getting a bit of momentum too. And Come to Grief has always been his baby. He loves it, and those guys are all awesome too. We love everybody, so he wanted to be able to focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we wished them well with it. They seem to be doing really good. They just had a new release come out too, a 3-song release. They got it out on vinyl too with their own label, Grievance Records, which is really cool. So
yeah, and didn't they do something with the band Fistula not long ago as well?
Yeah. I think they did a split too. Yep. With Dan and Fistula. Yeah, good guys too.
Okay, yeah.
And Dan from Fistula actually owns Patak, who's a distro, and they're actually the ones who put out the cassette version of Sons of the Elders for us.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, yep. I forgot all about that. Yeah, because I was in touch with him. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I was going to touch on was how it's such a small world up, in the New England and Maryland doom scene. It seems like that you guys. I mean, it's like you all kind of touched, I guess, cross paths with each other with Warhorse and Grief and Conclave and Benthic Realm. It's like. There's been kind of a rotating cast going between all these bands.
It even goes even further, too, into other metal bands and death metal bands and stuff from 20 years ago that we all used to play together. And, it's pretty crazy. There's a good friend of ours in the scene and a long time, a forever friend of mine, Ron Miles, who plays in a number of bands. And he brought that up specifically. He's like, dude, we have to sit down and do, a family tree so that we can see where all these people are connected from all these different bands. And I says, well, that's gonna take at least a case of beer, Ron. We still have to set a date for it. Ron, if you hear this, let's do it.
and just like any family tree, I'm sure you'll get that weird sort of oddball prog rock band showing up and be like, how the hell did that show up?
Hey, as long as it was done well, it's all welcome, right?
Right. So Conclave is going to be going back into the studio, you said, here pretty soon. So what are the songs shaping up to be as compared to Breaking Ground and Sins of the Elder?
So Breaking Ground to Sins of the Elders was a pretty noticeable shift, and I think that there will be a noticeable shift with this release too. A lot of that will be due in part to our new guitarist, Chris Gagier, that came on 2 years ago, actually. Today is his anniversary from officially being in Conclave. So,
oh, awesome.
Happy anniversary, Chris. I think there'll be a noticeable shift. I don't think it'll be a surprising shift from anybody that really knows us and knows what we like and kind of, what our favorite flavors are, if you will. But I don't think it's going to be a different album entirely either, We still have our kind of core recipe, if you will.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll ever change. Jeremy's obviously a huge part of that. He does a lot of the writing in the band as well. But yeah, I think it'll be well received. I love it. I love all the songs on it. I'm really, really, really excited to get in there. I wish it was tomorrow. I wish I had an unlimited budget so I could just keep recording it and keep tweaking it and keep messing with it for a year like I see some of these bands do. But we are going in to start on May 1st, actually. So.
Okay. How many songs do you have lined up for it, do you think?
Right now, 5 definite, maybe a 6th one. We've been we may end up recording more than ends up getting released on the album because we want to record as much material as we can, but we also want to try to work within the formats that are out there. Primarily, we would really like to be able to get ourselves in a position to release this one on vinyl. Mm-hmm. So with vinyl, you're a bit limited on what you can fit into each side, unless you want to start sacrificing the quality of the cut, and we don't want to do that. We're trying to pride ourselves a lot on our tone and our sound with this album. Mm-hmm. Jeremy and Chris's guitars and Jerry's bass are just crushing when we're in the same room, and if we can convey that,
right?
I would love to hear it come out on wax. So we're trying to format things to make sure we can keep it, somewhere right around 44, 45 minutes, and then we can split it, somewhat equally on the two sides of the record. But having said that, when we're in the studio and we've got slots booked and we have more material, we may go ahead and lay down some more stuff that'll come out maybe on another split or maybe a different version, like a CD version or something like that, So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
right now, 5 definite, maybe 6th, and possibly a 7th. There'll be a couple of interludes, too, which won't really get, an official track listing to them, I don't think. But
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if you had, the budget that the Swans seem to have, where they're like, well, this is our new release. It's 4 records in one release.
Yeah. And the time to write that much.
Yeah, I know. Man, I think on their last one, they had something like, I think the first album was 1 song and it was 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
I guess when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, how in the hell do you keep time on something like that?
Yeah. There's a lot of skills out there that I think people kind of take for granted sometimes, especially when it comes to, kind of shoegazy or really, really doomy, and it's really weird to get your internal clock moving at that pace,
Right.
How many measures was that? 76. Okay, right. Yeah. You sure it was 76? Yes, all right.
It's like I tapped out at 24.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that it can be very tricky to play very slow when compared to very fast. That, the two of them can be very, almost comparable when it comes to trying to keep up.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always look at things, from myself on a perspective is, in terms of a minute. So any division of 30 usually clicks really good, to my ear. So if I'm playing something at 60 beats a minute, or 120 or even 180, those tend to flow good with me. So anytime I start to retire below a minute, I kind of have that same problem too, where I'm like, am I dragging? Am I rushing? What's going on? I have to really sit back in my seat and just kind of let it flow and try to calm myself down a little bit. I always came from playing thrash stuff. That's what I really loved and was kind of just what I grew up on and what I started playing. So when I started playing a little bit on the slower side, it was a pretty big shift for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, were there any bands that really inspired you to try to go slower and see what you could accomplish?
Warhorse.
Right.
I'd say Warhorse was a big one.
Right.
I mean, honestly, even any of the heavier, thrash albums and stuff from back in the day, you got to a breakdown, and that little slower interlude part in the thrash song was like, there it is. That's what I like, And I hate to fall into that whole stereotype of breakdown, but man, when you when you hit a good breakdown, you just can't beat it,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things I've noticed in your style of playing drums is that there always does seem to be sort of a push and pull between fast and slow.
Oh, you know what? And you saying that, I'll tell you, here's a perfect example. The band Sepultura,
mm-hmm.
The album Beneath the Remains. I think it's Inner Self is the song. And the very beginning of it comes in with the guitars and stuff, and it has this big build-up, and it keeps doing that. And it's at a nice little kind of medium pace, just clicking along. And then it builds, and the drums start to do a fill, and it comes in, and you think it's going to explode. And the riff just keeps going, but like double bass comes in, but it's still at that just slow driving tempo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my inspiration right there. That's the stuff that just sends me right off to the moon.
Right.
Oh, I just love that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love that kind of sound too, where there feels like there's a tension.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
That always seems to, it's like. Weird analogy, it's almost like telling a joke. The idea that it's like you're leading somebody down one path and then you just go completely left with the expectation. And, it's the same kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a couple of things like that we do in some of our songs, too, in Conclave. We like that. I remember Jerry doing that. Oh, I like that. You make it like a little tease right there. I says, yeah. You kind of set them up, like you'll have a build-up and then, just fall off again, all right, let's go 4 more bars at that slow pace and then give it to them after, make them really want it,
Right, yeah. Yeah, and just punish them,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the songs that comes to mind with that type of style is the Funeral Fire song, where it has that kind of, it's like it's slow, but you've got that double bass going, just like rhythmic, and so it's like that's the one I keep thinking of when we're talking about this. Is that when you're with your arms, you're playing something almost completely independent of what's going on with your feet, and that's just I don't know. I find that fascinating because it seems to really keep the doom level, but it's like, all right, we're getting into death. We're dipping our toes over here, and it's really cool.
Yes, exactly. And then that's just my influence coming out, Sometimes the people, okay, let's just not do double bass there. Well, okay, And again, I'm not going to be, out there like, dying fetus or anybody and stomping these things off. I don't do heel toes and doubles and stuff like that. I just I like that plodding rhythmic feel to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love brutal, grind and death and everything too. Don't get me wrong. Just myself when I play, I like playing in that kind of medium wheelhouse there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
like you said, it gives it that little edge, that little bit of, extra hair or heat on it, but without going full blown. Yeah, well, this is just, thrashy metal or something. I like to have that kind of underlying doom feel to it.
Yeah, and because I feel like sometimes when you get too fast, you almost lose the attention of the listener because it's going so fast. It's almost like you have to have a technical mind to really catch what's happening there. And to the casual listener, they're just going to be kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm tuning out. I'm doing something else now.
Yeah, I'd say definitely that faster music is definitely something that the fan listener tunes into, and that you do have to develop an ear for. By the same token, shoegaze and like super slow funeral doom, same type of thing. You'll have a person that likes upbeat death metal or even pop or something, and they put that on, and they're like, "What is that?" They're like, "I can't even follow it. What are they doing? Is it literally a funeral? Oh no, it's a genre." Oh, and they're lost too within 2 minutes or something. Shouldn't this song be over? No, we haven't even approached the second bar yet.
Yeah.
So I do think that your ear has to really kind of get a taste for things, especially if it's something that you're not used to. I've done that a lot. Like even all the stuff I listen to. I grew up in a classical household. Classical musicians. Both my father and my mother are concert violinists.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I wasn't like growing up with the hippie family or the the metal family or anything. I just kind of was born out of that. So I've had a lot of tastes and a lot of introductions to different stuff, show tunes. Geez, if somebody says, tell me one of your favorite albums, I'd probably have to say the soundtrack from Fiddler on the Roof. You remember that? Yes. But I just love all kinds of different things, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Well, what did your folks think when you started really getting into the the whole metal scene with your musicianship?
My father was a little more hands-on. I grew up with him. My parents had split when I was on the younger side of things. So when I got into actually drums and guitar and metal and everything, I honestly, I can't say a bad thing about my dad. He was so supportive. Anybody I ever played with who came over to the house, because I was a drummer, so 9 times out of 10 people would come over to my house. They loved my father. He was an incredible musician. He was super relatable and just super supportive, I'm not going to lie and say that he never asked me if I could play quieter, but after telling him or yelling at him 2 or 3 times that I couldn't, he kind of let that fight go and would just go about his business upstairs doing his thing, but he was super supportive of it. He's like, hey, as long as you're doing something, he had pushed me to do other instruments when I was younger, piano, saxophone, trombone, all kinds of stuff. But once I got into drums, he was just like, okay, good luck.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate that you're into music.
Yep.
Well,
but he was awesome, always supportive.
That's really, that's awesome, because you hear that a lot, actually, from a lot of musicians that 9 times out of 10, the family that they come from usually don't appreciate the genre, but they appreciate the musicianship, and so they just kind of like, okay, at least it's music.
Yes, yep, exactly. And in today's day and age, boy, there are so many worse things that, a kid can choose to do growing up, you know what I mean? So, even back then, they were happy that I was doing that. They know where, I knew where I was and who I was going to be with, and at some level, but I wasn't, at least at those times, I wasn't running the roads, right?
Right.
Oh, you're playing again. Good. Coming up to practice again today.
Right. Yeah, I've kind of got the same mentality with my girls, is the idea that, I want the sleepovers to happen here. I want them to come over here and hang out, so that way, at the very least, I've got an eye on things. Yep. And then that makes me look like a good guy if I don't give them too much grief, if they're just kind of running around and being kids and whatnot. And I figure that's probably about the best way. So that way, I don't have to worry about them running around doing something that I have no idea about.
Exactly, yeah.
Well,
which is inevitable, but when we can control it as a parent, we try to, intervene a little bit,
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is that by the time they start making mistakes, I hope I've taught them enough about how to handle it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When I was younger, it was more like, no, they're never going to be able to do that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, or they're going to have to in order to learn. So maybe I can at least give them a couple of tools before they go out there. Maybe they'll have a shield and a sword instead of, just armor.
Right. And don't have to fall on their face and learn the hard way like most of us did, right?
Right, yeah. Ooh, boy.
But mine too, I don't know about your background or like how you were brought up as a child, and everybody's is different. But I do feel like, I came up having to learn a lot of things the hard way due to just my own stubbornness, but also just a sign of the times and the way things were, I think, when we were growing up. I'm 47 now, so from the, early, mid, late 70s up through. And I think that, I grew up, didn't have a lot. I wasn't scraping to eat, everybody in my family always made sure I had a meal and a roof over my head or whatever. But, it wasn't the lavish lifestyle. I didn't have a lot of the things that the other kids had and stuff. And I, as a child, had harbored resentment over that. Like, geez, man, when I get older, I want my kids to have this, I want my kids to have that, and which I think at some level is a natural reaction for a child. Either that or I'm just a crappy human. But, I kind of grew up, and as I was getting older and having kids, I always still harbored that. And I was like, I really want them to have, maybe a nicer this or a nicer that. And, not have to work all the time or not have to do this and that. And just have them have a great life being kids. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of other parents around my age kind of had a similar mentality. And now, as these kids are getting older, and like I had mentioned earlier, my boys are dipping their toes into the workforce. They're older, and they aren't ready for this yet. It's kind of like, have I hurt them more by, kind of sheltering them or doing more for them and not having them worry about so much, things maybe that I had to do growing up. Mm-hmm. It's like, try to enhance their lives, and have I done wrong this whole time? Which I know I haven't. I'm not being overly critical, but at the same time, it's like, boy, yeah, you do have to kind of let them figure out a little bit, and here's the leash. Go out there away. I got a tether here.
Right.
But go out and make some mistakes and mess up, and
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling with the same thing right now. My oldest, she is, in middle school, and so the need for me to try and repair everything and fix everything and make sure that she's doing everything she's supposed to is, I'm trying to pull back from that and let her kind of become more responsible. And there are things I see her doing, and I want to scream. I want to be like, no, don't do that.
Especially after I told you 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Yep, and it's just, it's what comes with the territory. It's the whole idea, it's like, gosh, you got to let them go a little bit in order for them to, to learn some of these lessons the way that they're supposed to. Because, the way I see it is that they'll always have me to come back to.
Yep.
So it's like if they fall flat on their face, okay, they've at least got a home that they can come back to, that things are going to be okay here.
Right.
So, and a lot of people don't have that, which is, a shame. But I know it's a tricky balancing act trying to let go and to take care at the same time.
It really is.
So
I never really understood it. Like, you'd hear about it kind of growing up when your children are really small, and you're like, yeah, I don't have that problem. Oh yeah, it's totally real.
Oh
totally
yeah. Yeah, and it's funny how your mentality changes by the time they reach that age, and you're suddenly like, wait, I don't think the same way I did at all about this, and
just in life in general, right, Dave?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about age and perspective. Wow. Like me looking back at 20-year-old me or 19-year-old me. Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Time is an amazing thing, and it does. It gives you a lot of perspective. It allows you to, well, at least I hope, a lot of people reflect, and maybe look back and try to take some of the bad things that happened and do better moving forward. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I won't do that again.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny when you're younger, you have a list of like 15 things. These are things that are never going to happen, and now you're kind of like, as long as these 2 things don't happen, I think I'm cool. I think everything else, it's like, a little wiggle room there. I think they'll live through if they do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, okay, we're going to get into the name of Conclave. You and I were messaging about that last night, and it's funny, until you mentioned it, I really didn't even think about the fact that the name Conclave was a Catholic thing. About like the group that voted on who was going to be the new pope. I don't know why it never attached itself to me, but it didn't. And suddenly I'm like, oh wow, that's even more of a segue into, this whole idea of, where does your spiritual mentality or growth, opinions, where do they lie? Because you have at least some sense of, I'm assuming a Catholic background that would have informed a name like that.
Right. So it's really, really kind of interesting. When we were kicking this name around, first and foremost, we were trying to make sure nobody else had the name. We see that all kinds of times with, kind of underground bands or whatever, and then there's 3 of them, they all have the same name. So first and foremost, okay, let's make sure that nobody has it. Before I tell you where the real meaning came from, we came upon this meeting too, and which was, like you said, when they're going for the new pope and they have the papal conclave and all of that. So like, well, that's kind of neat. It's actually totally not what we're about, and but kind of has a large presence out there, so it might pique somebody's interest, right? Marketing. You got to think of the marketing, right? So
yeah,
it's like, okay, we'll go ahead and look forward. I think we found one band, and they were maybe from Brazil. Small band, thrash band, not on the main label, not doing anything major. So I was like, okay, I think we're pretty safe. And then anytime you go on like Instagram or social media sites and you just put in Conclave, it either pertains, specifically to the papal conclave, or it has to do with like a lot of the Indian culture overseas, and they have all their giant religious experience and groups and meetings and everything else. But the name actually came from a movie called The Warriors.
Oh, the 70s movie with the gangs?
Yeah.
Ah.
And the Conclave is when they assembled all the gangs. That was Gramercy Park, I believe. So when he gets everybody all together, that was the Conclave.
Oh my gosh! Because that's when he gets assassinated, isn't it?
The movie, we're huge, 70s, movie fans and everything else. So I was like, that's just great. And nobody knows, Like I said, most of the time, if people go, "What is Conclave or a Conclave?" they look it up and go, "Oh yeah, that must be what it is," Plus, you can add to that kind of mystery where, okay, well, they have their first full length, and it's called Sins of the Elders, right? Plays into the whole end of the religious context of Conclave, right?
Oh yeah, and the picture of the stoning too. That really, dovetails right in there.
Stoning of Stephen, right?
Yeah.
Which I saw, and the actual song "Sins of the Elders" is about being stoned to death, but it's a primitive kind of cultural thing, you know what I mean? Which, fortunately, here we've tended to move away from. Unfortunately, in other parts of the world, it's still present and completely abhorrent. But I guess everybody has their own culture, right? So
right.
I'm not here to poo-poo on anybody else's traditions, even if they're barbaric and completely inhumane and nothing I would ever consider doing. Did I just say that? But yeah, that's where the actual name came from. Jerry had come up with it. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic because that was one of those movies that when I was growing up, it was spoken about in terms of we saw it years ago. It was pre VHS and all that kind of stuff, and then I finally got to see it in the late '80s, and and it was fantastic. It seemed dated, but at the same time, it had the level of violence I needed from it. But I never would have guessed that. In 100 years, I would have never guessed that.
Nobody does. It's wonderful. That's what I love about Jerry. Like, even with his lyrics, we'll talk about a song and the meaning behind it, and the thoughts and ideas that we're trying to convey, and then Caveman Dan will come out with, I walked to the store and bought some milk. You can't say it like that, Dan. We got to kind of make this a little prettier. Let's put a little art into that, okay? And Jerry will take that stupid term and rephrase it to where it really, really sounds good, and it actually invokes some sort of thought on the listener's behalf, with the person who's reading the lyrics. So he's really, really good at that. He really is.
Oh, that's cool. He
always says the thesaurus is his best friend, but it's not the thesaurus; it's his mind. He's just great. Right?
Yeah, it's like a thesaurus is a tool, so good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's funny because I was going to ask you about the lyrics in general, because I've found that most of the time when lyrics in any kind of a song, it's very rare that what is being said is what is actually being meant. And so,
totally.
with that song Funeral Fire, it's like, funeral fire, your God's a liar. And I'm thinking, I seriously doubt that that's what they're talking about. It sounds like it's some kind of it could even be a political diatribe, but what? So what? Well, how do you guys dress things up? What are the actual things that you get into lyrically?
Well, a lot of it has to do with death, doom, and despair. I know it's a giant shock, but it's a lot of what our context is. But a lot of that death, doom, and despair, I feel it's come from and been derived from personal experiences. We never get too specific. We never really, how do I say it? We never really break it down to where everybody knows exactly what it was about. I think that will always remove from the allure of any and every song. But we do definitely convey it to the point where if we were to read it out loud to each other, we can just look at each other and feel every bit of that, and in the terms of which we meant it when we wrote it,
Mm-hmm.
Funeral Fire is it's basically being at the end of your rope, turning to alcohol and drowning your sorrows, basically killing yourself with it. All the faith and everything that you ever had known, had been taught, instructed, or told to believe is just gone. That's where the line of, your God is a liar is basically saying, hey, you said to have faith, and I can't, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
everything's been stripped away from me, and I don't care anymore. I just don't care, you know. And Jerry, again, I can, you know, sit there and cry to him, and he can just write down ideas as I'm bawling and sobbing, and then he can turn it into this just beautiful wordplay to where I didn't tell him to write any of that, and I read it, and it's exactly how I was feeling and what I was talking with him about. You know, that's not like just my song either. He has lyrics and everything in it that, you know, he pulls off of his world. But, you know, we definitely do that. You know, I like to put things on the surface so that maybe, and again, it goes even to the music, but maybe people read it one way, but it's actually the other way, you know? That push and pull, like you said.
Yeah.
Funny you mentioned that. I went on our YouTube channel the other day, and I noticed that they had taken down a video that I made and put up for one of our songs called Mammoth, which was off of Sins of the Elders. This is an instrumental song. And the song got barred, removed, and stripped from YouTube due to hate speech.
Fucking YouTube.
Pretty good, huh? So it's a hate speech song that's an instrumental, you know. Maureen, who plays bass with me in Benthic From, was like, see, you guys are so angry and heavy. Even your instrumentals are, you know, considered hate speech because you're just so heavy. Sorry if I cut in and out. I have another call coming in now.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so it got taken down, and I have to assume the song, it's called Mammoth. Basically, it was written as, how do you want to say it? Mammoth was a tank. It was a German tank. The kind of concept came from Terry Savastano as far as the whole German tank aspect went. He's a huge military buff, loves all of that stuff. So it was like, all right, German military, tank, war. Yep, that sounds just about right. Great song, wicked cool, a lot of dynamics to it. And I'm like, I'd like to make a video for it. And I kind of just went with the whole German tank thing. I started to go down this wormhole, and I ended up reviewing all footage from World War II, like government footage. And to try to make a long story short, I put together a whole video using footage from World War II from the Germans' perspective, which was basically, consider you're a German citizen living in Germany at the time of World War II under that regime's power, and just what a devastating, terrible life that must be, you know, just a horrible existence. There's scenes with, you know, you just see people trying to remove all the rubble, not military, just people, you know what I mean? And so it was just sad, but I think a lot of the imagery in it, because it had, you know, Nazi symbolism, it showed, you know, these people marching, it showed it was just footage from the wars. I think with the new controls that they put on it, it just zoned in on, like, thumbnail pictures.
Yeah.
And if that picture matched, like, you know, Hitler or anyone else that was in one of those party lines and could be deemed offensive, bang, it got flagged and pulled down.
Wow.
And it had there was no kind of intent of anything, you know, bad or, you know, none of us are pro-Nazis. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to make light of it. I just think it's just, you know, one of the worst things ever. And it was just such a sad story. It spoke to me while I was making the video. So then for people to pull it down, not even having the decency or the courtesy or anything to say, hey, what is this about? You know, am I interpreting this wrong? Just strictly on some imagery, it just kind of blew my mind, you know.
That's just, it's so ridiculous. I was talking to the singer of Morbid Angel a couple of months ago, and one of the things he said that really stuck with me was that he was talking about how it's so bizarre that people call each other Nazi now so much that it's been so overused that it almost doesn't even have an impact anymore. Yeah. That, you know, the horrors that these guys visited on an entire race of people is now being equated to saying asshole on social media, which is insane. It's like, you know, could there be a bigger disconnect? And the fact that places like YouTube are going to take it down just because you had imagery is ridiculous. I mean, it's so indicative of the world we live in now. It makes me just shake my head.
It is, you know, it's not a time that we want to embrace and celebrate. It's a time we need to remember, though, you know? Lest we forget. You know, this is all going to happen again if you know, wipe everything away and forget about it, and Nazi just becomes a term for an asshole, like you said. You know what I mean? Or somebody with a difference of opinion than yourself. You know, you gotta remember what the heck happened and how it happened. You know, wiping all of these artifacts and bits of history away are not going to help that. If anything, it's going to foster it happening again, because if you don't learn from your mistakes because you don't remember that you made them, you're going to repeat them, you know?
Yeah, I know. I could see somebody not knowing anything about the Third Reich, and then, you know, no, you cannot have that information. You cannot learn about that. And then they're going, why? Well, now it's forbidden. Now it's interesting. Now I want to be a part of it. And, you know, the next thing you know, you've got another little cult developing. And it's just going to bloom and bloom and bloom. It's almost like a disease. And it's like, my gosh. I could go off on that for quite some time.
But it kind of touched on the same thing, like, you know, on the surface, hey, maybe that seems like, geez, what are these people, you know, a white power or, you know, a right nationalist? What the heck are these guys about? And it was the farthest thing from that, you know. Regardless, just because the pictures are there, it's gone.
Right.
You know? I grew up with the PMRC when I was growing up. You know?
Oh, boy, I remember that.
Yeah, Dave Mustaine kind of singled it out best, and Dee Snider with Twisted Sister. I mean, these people like frontline, you know, battle soldiers on this, and I just can see this shit happening all over again, you know? And it's very unnerving. It's unsettling. It gets me a little on the angry side, because all of a sudden everybody knows what's best for everybody else again.
Yeah.
No one has the ability or the mental, you know, awareness to turn the fucking channel. Excuse my French. You know, to roll the dial, to scroll on by, to just make a choice, not to look at something that somebody else likes. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm all for trying to, you know, not foster hate speech, not foster white nationalist groups, not foster people that want to get together to hurt and kill and maim other people. You know, I'm all for doing that, but I'm not for taking away people's choice and freedoms either. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, what's funny is that, you know, you're talking about your instrumental. Didn't the same thing happen to Frank Zappa when the PMRC thing was happening? Didn't he get like an explicit lyrics label, and the entire album, I think, was instrumental?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
Just because it was Zappa, right? Jerry Orrin would know the answer to that question, too. He's a huge Zappa fan.
I mean, I could be. I'm pretty sure I remember reading that, because I remember Zappa was one of the ones that went up and just absolutely dismantled the PMRC before Congress over how ridiculous what they were doing was.
Yep.
Well, all right, let me take a breath and think about something else real quick.
No more censorship.
Oh, God, I know. It's just, well, YouTube has been one of those things here recently that I've been trying to get away from, just because they have become so, like, weirdly, like, dictatorial in terms of, we know what's best for you to watch, and if we see something on here that someone says is bad, we'll remove it. It doesn't matter what it is. Someone said it's bad and offended them. And so that's been bothering me, so I've been kind of staying away, and just to hear that this happened to you guys is, obnoxious.
Yep, right out of the blue, I just went on, like, I haven't watched this for a while, you know, and poof, I was like, wow, where'd it go? You know, I had, it was featured, JJ of the Obelisk had done a feature for us. Now, if you're going to go pull up that article, that'll be all struck again now, because it's gone. It's like, you know, it was there. It was literally there for like 2 years. It's not like I just posted a new video, you know. It's like, wow. So then I tried to upload it again, immediately struck right down. So it does. It has a new algorithm, or it does scanning for the imagery and whatnot, whatever's in your video. You know?
Holy shit.
And this whole change with YouTube has been coming for a while. My oldest son actually is very big into computers and IT and everything, and he said it, I think it was a couple of years ago when Google bought them. He's like, yeah, it's all going to change now. It's all downhill. Google owns everything. Google's tied into everything. Google's watching you. Google's listening to you. Conspiracy.
Right.
I won't throw you down that rabbit hole either.
Right. Yeah, I know. It was a couple of years ago. That was silly talk.
You can see it all around us, you know. Like you say, here's a bunch of overreach too. Like, we're going to tell you what you can watch and what you can't watch, what's good, what's bad, you know.
Yeah. I forgot who it was that said this, but I thought it was really, really topical. They said something like, 1984 happened. It's just, it wasn't the government. It was all of us doing it to each other.
Yep.
And the more that I see and hear this kind of stuff, I think that's 100% accurate. And I'm just like, man, Orwell was onto something.
Orwell was a man way ahead of his time. Man, he saw it coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me not want to read his stuff anymore because I'm just like, oh man, I'm living in it.
Just go read Animal Farm. That'll make everything way better, right?
Oh God, yeah. I haven't read that in a while, but woof.
That doesn't represent the political climate at all either, does it?
No. Oh man. Holy God.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It really is. It's a wild ride,
Yeah. I mean, I think things do correct themselves just because people get sick and tired of this kind of stuff, but it feels like it has to get to such a point that people are, like, the great majority has to be enraged, and someone is like, here's an alternative, and then we all flock to that, and then leaving, the Gestapo behind, as it were.
Yeah. Or we get a good plague.
Right.
China seems to be helping with that at the moment.
Oh man, I know. Good Lord. Yeah, that's the what virus of the year. They always have there's always a virus every year,
I'm hoping. Here I am again, being an awesome human, making light of terrible things and a terrible virus or whatever. But I hope it fizzles out pretty quick here and doesn't end up being a catastrophe.
Yeah, one of the things that helps me stay focused is that I try not to watch any of the main news outlets any longer or read from them anymore. I try to go to the Associated Press, where it's kind of like, this is what happened. And, without all of the fun buzzwords that come with it typically. And that usually keeps my head on straight. I think if I started, going to any of the MSNBCs or Fox News and whatnot, I think I would probably flip out within 3 days. It's like it's all over. You're right, yeah. Oh man! All right, well, let me get back to music so I can keep my head on straight and I can go through the rest of my day and all this, in the snowpocalypse, as it were, that we're gonna have down here.
Poor thing.
Right. So one of the things I did want to ask you was, I noticed between the Breaking Ground album and the Sins of the Elder, on the Sins of the Elder album, your style seemed very different. And one of the things that sticks out to me is, and I apologize because I am just the worst at, when it comes to instruments and their names, but there was a certain symbol you used on Sins of the Elder that kind of make a pa kind of a sound. And it really stuck out to me, and that always seemed to stay in my head. And I was wondering what brought that about? Like, what brought about this sound, and what was it that evolved with your drumming from Breaking Ground to Sins?
So, with Breaking Ground, basically, Jerry and I got together and just kind of started messing around. Had a couple of beers, and we're just jamming out. Yeah, he'll bring a drum set up, and we'll just mess around. And he started kicking around some stuff that were originally penned to be Warhorse songs in the beginning. And so it kind of had that vibe and that kind of swing and that kind of feel going in. But, we're both metalheads too, and we were kind of toying around with things. But two of those songs kind of spurned out of that whole element. So I think that Breaking Ground does have a bit more of a kind of groove feel to it. And with that cymbal, which I think the one you're referring to is a China I use. The second album got more kind of just creative, creating things out of like my head and Jerry's head and Jeremy's head and Terry's head, and it was just kind of more metal for me. And I get a lot of shit for my China symbol in the genre. Almost every club I go to, I get people that roll their eyes at me and shake their head or whatever, but hey, I love it. It's kind of part of my color and my flavor, and if you don't, too bad. But yeah, I think that's the China symbol.
Oh man, people give you a hard time about that?
Yeah, because it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of more of like a death metal thing and whatnot, and it's an extremely annoying symbol if you're in close proximity to it, because it's so loud, cutting, and trashy sounding, But I love that. It's kind of like me. It's loud and trashy.
Well, you need that kind of a sound, when you're playing metal. If you were playing a pop song, I could see people going like, "Oh, that's too abrasive." But I mean, abrasive's sort of the name of the game when it comes to rock and metal and things like that.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and a lot of the people that'll give me some grief about it are kind of maybe more on the rock to doom side of things, and again, like if you listen to a lot of, and it's like our genre. What would you say Conclave is? What would you call our style?
I think if I just did a surface level, I would just say doom.
Okay, so go and listen to any other doom band, and tell me how many of them are using a China.
Right, which is probably why it stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's kind of why I get a bunch of grief for it. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, hey, that's my thing, and there's one promoter in particular in Boston who will remain unnamed, and every time I do a show with him, I make sure to hit it a couple extra times because he hates it. You know who you are.
See, yeah, I mean, if you're going to bust balls, you've got to make sure that you can take it when it comes back your way,
That's right. Jerry always tells me, if you're going to walk up to the bell, you got to ring it.
Right. Oh, but well, are you going to be doing anything new with Benthic Realm here soon? Since you're going to be doing something with Conclave, are there plans later on, like this year, for some new Benthic Realm stuff?
We are writing feverishly right now. There's a nice little vibe going, and Krista is just kind of rolling stuff out right now, so we're in a really good spot, catching our stride. So we are going to be recording this year. Right now, I'd say the earliest will probably be maybe the end of July, beginning of August that we'll get started on it. Songs are really coming along nice. We haven't chosen a studio yet for Benthic. We've got a couple that we're kicking around, but we want to knock on some doors, look at schedules and budgets and all that. But yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun too. Mm-hmm. Great songs we have coming together right now, and those are real memorable, and I don't want to say hooky or catchy because they're not really hooky or catchy, but they just stick to you. So
mm-hmm.
I think you'll like them. It'll be really good.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and that's going to be a full length too. I think we're at least at 5 right now for that band as well, maybe a 6th, but definitely 5.
Yeah.
And that album's going to have, I think, a nice fair amount of dynamics through it as well. Every song isn't going to sound the same. I'm not going to say too much about it, but it's going to be really good too.
Yeah.
Same with the Conclave one. Like, out of the 5 definites that we're going to have on there, no 2 songs really sound, the same.
Mm-hmm.
Similar, same band, but they've got some dynamics. So
yeah,
I try not to just hammer out the same 4 chords in a row. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think most general fans will appreciate when one album doesn't sound like the last one and the last one and the last one.
Right.
It's that there are many bands out there that do that, and it's like on some level you're like, well, I appreciate that you do what you do well, but at the same time, man, I don't give a rat's ass about your last 6 albums. It's like you pretty much covered it on the first 2.
Yep. And it's funny. I think what the heck was it? Was it Naomi? Maybe somebody come up and says, "Oh, what's the new album going to be like? Is it going to be like the last one?" Well, no, it's a new one. Oh, it's too bad. I really liked the last one. Oh, well, this is a new one. And the next person will come up, oh, is it going to sound like the last album? Yeah, it's going to sound a lot like it. Oh, well, that's too bad. I didn't like that one. I was hoping it was something new. So it's kind of like, you're never going to, make everybody happy. And, some people do get butthurt if you change up your recipe, too much. And,
mm-hmm.
That's not the same band, For me, maybe Metallica,
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of coming around again on their last album a little for me, but it was kind of like some big shifts there that went, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I was the same way. It's like, if they'd come out with that last album, if they came out with that after, Saint Anger, I might have forgiven them. But at this point, I'm just like, nah, you know what, you guys do what you do. You've got your fan base. You're not going to miss me, so I'll just move on with my day.
I'll never forget the day that the Black Album came out and the first single got released and premiered on MTV, and my life just ended. I came off of such a high with Injustice for All,
Mm-hmm.
super kick-produced drums. I know there's a bunch of arguments about the no bass and all that, but the album was just killer for me, and it was really aggressive and angry as hell, and it was just a masterpiece. And they came out with it, the Sandman, and I just went to shit.
Well, see, at least you had the foresight to realize what it was. I was still trying to believe, even after Sandman, and then it was when I heard Nothing Else Matters where I was like, fuck you.
Yeah. Andy and Clam fight gives me shit. He's like, the Black Album's a good album. I'm like, I was born in 73. He's like, okay, you get a pass.
Right.
But anybody 10 years younger than you, the Black Album's a good album.
Oh gosh, well, what's funny about that album is it's the one I'll let some non-metal people listen to, and that can be their gateway sometimes. But it's always against my better judgment. I'm just like, ugh, I don't really care for this album, but you might like it, and if that leads us to talking about Megadeth, then that'll be a good thing.
Right.
Well, except for Risk. Risk was a piece of shit.
Yeah. We all get a mulligan, right?
Yeah.
We all get a mulligan.
Yeah. At least Dave puts it. I feel like he puts his heart and soul into each one, and I guess the only one where he was like, where you're like, all right, just this once, and not all of his albums are great, but Risk was exceptionally in terms of like how shitty it was, and but like you said, most of us are pretty forgiving, and he's back on the upswing. Like Dystopia, I ranked that up there with the early stuff. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, and you look at the guy's career, and he's just amazing. Mustaine is just incredible.
Yeah.
He's absolutely a master at the art, and I mean, you're hard pressed to find a better shredder anywhere. I'm not really positive if he's the mastermind behind the lyrical content, which was always fantastic too. Yeah. I know he's worked with amazing musicians side by side too, that I'm sure do a lot of the writing as well. Chris Poland and Friedman and everybody else through the years and the decades. But yeah, he's just incredible.
Yeah.
Really is. And not taking anything away from Metallica either. I mean, I remember saying to my friends that this is the band, Metallica is the band that's going to open the doors. That heavy music is finally going to make it on the radio, and we're going to start to lose this stigma that we're all a bunch of just degenerate loser shitbags or whatever that listen to crappy music. Yeah, and they did. They blew the door wide open, and now the musical landscape for everything has changed. It's a lot heavier out there, and I mean Metallica could almost go into easy listening. Things have gotten so extreme, Yeah. But they were like the forefathers, I think, for really getting more people involved in the heavy music scene.
Oh yeah. Which
I'm sure a lot of people hate too, because everybody likes to be punk and cult and underground, and everybody likes it. I don't like it anymore. That type of mentality. But
yeah, I know.
I'm just here to spread the metal. As long as everybody likes it, I'm happy.
Right? Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it. And it's like if you like heavy music, we'll get along. There are certain types that you and I are going to disagree on, but I'll still have a beer with you at the concert.
Right, but I'll still tell you like crap.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't exclude ball busting in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's a given, right?
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah, I got a couple of friends that when they'll be like, hey, have you heard this band? I'll be like, oh, yeah, you mean that pussy shit? Yeah, I've heard of it.
It sucks, just like you.
Yeah.
Your opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. My daughter, she's got that kind of sass about her that she pretty much got from me, and my wife is just kind of like, I just don't understand that type of humor. I'm like, it's hilarious. You're making fun of each other, and it's funny.
Right. You just gotta look for the cues,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find somebody's weakness, you mock it, and then you move on, and everybody laughs and has a good time. You don't actually mean it. If they start crying, you'll quit.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, you gotta look for those cues there. You see some vapors building up in those eye sockets there.
Oh yeah, sorry, man.
Give them a pat on the back or the hug. Or here's a beer. Yeah. Or if it's your daughter, I love you, sweetie. I'm just picking on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's healthy. You gotta give them a little bit of sense of realism and some humility and some humor. You know what I mean? And, learn how to take a joke. A lot of people right now don't know how to take a joke.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth. It's like, if you can make something funny where you've been made fun of, that's the best way to turn it back around on somebody.
Big time.
Yeah. And so many people that are just like, no, I'm highly offended. It's just like, man, if you had picked on how highly offended you were, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, and I would have laughed, and I'd have been like, wow, you've got a real balanced head on your shoulders. Good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. Yeah, people are pussies. I guess that's what I'm really saying.
Yeah, it's a little tough. I'm sure it's always been out there, but like, I attribute like a lot of where it seems like everything is so much more nowadays, like even all the negativity and whatnot, like, there's more murder, or there's more rape, or there's more, abuse or neglect, or, I feel that a lot of these things and a lot of these issues have always been there. They've always been, terrible or whatever. Just, I think they're just so much more amplified now,
Mm-hmm.
There's just this gigantic loudspeaker of an internet out there that just lets people shoot from the hip constantly. Bam, 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 bam. And if it's a hot topic and the tide starts to pull this way, well, all those, little shrimp are going to go right along with it and, make it seem like it's a heck of a lot more, And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess you got to, like you said, turn off some of the big box crap and just, not pay attention to it. Unplug a bit, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
Take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and just maybe, take the idea that, the world is not that concerned with you and what you think that much. There are people around you who are going to be concerned about it, but it's like the world at large, they're not really going to care too terribly much, and maybe that's too much reality for some people to handle.
Right, and I think that their world might be a little on the small side.
All right.
You know what I mean? They don't think outside much more of their screen or their car or, just me.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, bubbles are comfortable. It's
Yep.
I'm not going to lie. I enjoy mine when I'm stuck inside of it, that's for sure.
I told you, that's what I did. I carved myself out a little hole and I just stay right in here.
Right. Oh, man. Well, look, Dan, I'm going to let you go. I probably kept you too long, but I appreciate you talking to me. And I'm glad that we finally got to talk again. It's been, 2 years since the Doom Fest was the last time we talked.
I know. Are you going this year? We'll be back there again this year.
I am going to try. I'm looking for some sort of angle to get me up there for a business reason. If I can't find that, I'm going to try to figure something out, because I only got to go that one day last time, and I completely missed you guys' set. So I want to see you guys play. So I'm going to do everything I can to make it up there, because I had a great time, even if it was just for one day.
Well, I hope you make it, man. It was great to see you there. I'd love to see you again, and it's always a great time there. They got a new second venue this time too, so that'll be really cool.
Oh, that's fantastic! Man, yeah. See, I'm gonna have to figure something out. I'll get creative. You'll probably see me there.
Make it happen.
I know, man. I will. All right,
well,
man.
Thanks for having me on, Dave. I really, really appreciate it. You're a great guy. I appreciate you taking an interest in me and the bands and everything else, and just being a good person, man. We need more guys like you out there,
Oh, well, I appreciate it, brother. I do my best, so it's definitely when I find people and bands that I like, I really like to put my support behind them in any way that I can. So yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the music too from you guys.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you, and I appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Well, we'll talk to you sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
All right. Thank you, Dan. We'll talk to you later.
Good luck with the snow.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll get out my snow shovel.
Bye-bye.
Bye. going to do it for the latest episode of the Rock God Podcast. Make sure you go and check out our past episodes on Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and any other platforms that stream good quality podcasts such as ours. Also, make sure to check out our social media, Instagram, Heavy Vinyl Records, Facebook, Heavy Vinyl and Cassettes, and Twitter @VinylHeavy. I want to thank Dan for taking a few minutes out of his very busy day to talk to us about his band and his hobbies, and I want you to make sure to go and check out their band page on Bandcamp at conclave1.bandcamp.com, on Facebook at Conclave Band, on Instagram at conclave_MA, and Twitter Conclave Band 1. Also check out benthicrealm.bandcamp.com. Also be on the lookout for new Benthic Realm material that's going to be recorded this summer and hopefully released later on this year. Thanks for tuning in once again, and until next time, God bless.